Hey guys, what's up? I'm back again. People said they wanted to see me do another discussion, and I'm feeling a little bit motivated to do it. So, well, let's get to it, shall we? Okay. Here's the deal. I had said at the end of the last video I wanted to touch on this, so I think I'm going to touch on this. Honestly, I can't remember what all I said I wanted to touch on. So, oh, good lord, remind me. Okay. Please. But I digress. And I do that a lot. Okay, we gotta talk about something here, and it's this growing mentality. This growing mentality by film studios, by actors, by even just other folks on the internet. That it doesn't matter what happens, it doesn't matter what they do, no matter what happens, no matter how much they change things, no matter how much they might butcher things, none of that matters because in the end, you are going to see it anyway. If they put in a bunch of special effects, it doesn't matter, you'll go see it anyway. If they put the name of something popular on it, it does not matter, you will go see it anyway. And I want to talk about that. This is going to be significantly shorter, I think. But to really speak on this, I think we need to go back and talk about when this started. Some people may know that there was a bit of a superhero movie drive for a time. It really started to take off with Batman, though there were also some stabs at other heroes. The Incredible Hulk, Captain America, that did really poorly, which is why Batman was considered a really risky venture. Superman had movies, but those had also crashed and burned by Superman 3 and 4. And, Batman was indeed a risky venture, and considering the fact that they may not be terribly willing to go out for sequels, per se, it was considered extremely risky to make. But they made it, and it was a hit, and Tim Burton did not know whether or not there was going to be a sequel when he made it, which is why it was, written the way it was. I do have a problem with that, but I can understand why they did it. And then came the sequel, which did not do nearly as well. People said was too dark. He got booted from the project, and they brought in Joel Schumacher. Now, Schumacher, contrary to popular belief, actually did not necessarily want to make these movies the goofball, screwed up things that they were. That was actually a mandate of the studio, because they thought it would help them sell the toys more. In fact, by the time the Batman and Robin debacle came around, he kept saying that we can salvage this franchise, but we need to take it back to what Tim Burton made it. It needs to be darker again. It needs to be... But they blew him off, and when they finally did decide to do something, they pretty much yanked him off it and made him the scapegoat. And for years, as a result, the superhero genre kind of petered out. It was almost completely dead. There were a few lesser knowns who got movies after that. I'm not sure. I think that movie, the movie adaptation of The Shadow, was made after Batman and Robin. I'm not sure, or around the same time. The Phantom, so on and so forth. But really, it was just kind of a dead genre. There was nothing there. And then finally, it got revived and got a kick in the pants when the first XMen movie came out. Because people had never really thought they'd ever see one again. People had never thought they'd do a movie of the X-Men of all things, and they were really excited. That being said, it was a very, very flawed movie. There were a lot of decisions made that did not need to be made. It made no narrative sense for them not to have at least something resembling their costumes from the comics. It was completely unnecessary. Bryan Singer argued, though, that the general audience would not accept that, even though we know now for a fact that that is not true. But, yeah, I mean, it's not one of those cases either where, like, they had just, been there and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, hey, we're superheroes, let's make these costumes. There's got to be some kind of narrative point where you can sit down and actually make a costume. or have a costume. But they had that with this movie. They had a reason to have costumes, at least something close to resembling the comic incarnations. I mean, I'm not expecting 100% Cyclops to have the same thing he wore, his most famous outfit being from the 90s cartoon with the bandolier and his hair sticking out of the top and, the swashbuckler boots and gloves. No, I'm not quite expecting that. I'm also not sure why he had that bandolier-looking thing in the first place, but I don't know. Not the point. Point is, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. He's had multiple suits throughout the comics, and I would have been okay with something resembling any of those, even if it was the original, X-Men suits with the yellow and blue. But nope, went with plain black leather for everyone. And even Magneto, while they did at least tint it red, is wearing mostly leather. But yeah, it's just, stuff like that. Narrative changes. The fact that they pretty much then decided, we're going to make Wolverine front and center in everything. Which, it makes sense to a degree. He was at the time and still is one of the most popular X-Men characters, even though I don't really consider him one, as his existence, was there long before he joined the X-Men. He was actually originally a Hulk villain, oddly enough. But yeah, it's just one of those things that bugs me. But people accepted it because it was the first thing we had in a long time, and there was this mentality. Now, this is the part where things start to get really shaky. And it's something that I had heard for years since then, and I'm still hearing a little bit, even to this day, although it's become a little bit less that and a little more the other. And that was this mentality that we should be grateful that they made one at all. Be grateful that they made a movie at all. Be grateful that they threw us a bone and made us a movie. That is what we need to be grateful for. It doesn't matter what they changed or how inaccurate it is, and it doesn't even necessarily matter if it's a good quality movie, which the X-Men movies certainly are not good quality movies. Some of them are guilty pleasures, some of them are decent, a lot of them are bad. But that's also going to channel into this, by the way. But none of that mattered. We were just supposed to be grateful we got a movie at all and move on. X2, same thing happened. Movie was better. I have to admit, it was a fairly good movie. But, the time's gone by. They still haven't made any, kind of uniform changes or even attempts. Even the bad guys, once again, Deathstrike, Black Leather, it's just... Ugh. Bryan Singer has a leather fetish. He has to. I'm sorry. And then, X3 came out. And people are going to say, oh, that wasn't Singer, that was Brett Ratner, and he didn't know what he was doing. The problem with what Brett Ratner did is, ironically, the exact same thing Bryan Singer did. They wanted to continue in the same vein, but at the same time, they wanted to make their films stand out and be bigger and better and, try to top what the last movie had done. So, in the case of Singer, he has Superman doing some incredibly stupid and impossible things that Superman should not be able to do. And they both went for way over the top drama. Jean comes back with the Phoenix powers and kills Cyclops right off the bat, which of course thus opens up the gate for him to pursue the whole Jean Cyclops thing that never happened, but okay. Not to that degree. That's for dang sure. Cyclops generally got really mistreated in those movies, which ironically then made him not terribly popular among the general population anymore, which thus played into how they started to treat him in the comics, which thus played into recent developments where only recently have they fixed him and made him not a douche. But I digress. But the point is, see, that's another danger with these movies, and I want to talk about that at a future date too. That one I won't forget. But yeah, when it comes to, say, these movies, Singer, too, when he did Superman, he wants to, uh, he wants to, hang on. I lost my thought. Okay. Singer in Superman Returns had Superman, he had abandoned the planet for like years, I think. You find out that basically he knocked up Lois Lane and then just completely left her alone. It just, I don't know. It really didn't feel like Superman. It really felt like a lot of stuff thrown in just for the sake of drama. And then they top it off with Superman actually lifting an entire island made of kryptonite. It's stuff like that. And it's the fact that it's one of the big flaws, honestly, with Superman in general. And that's this notion that, once you get him to a certain level of power, his greatest enemy isn't an actual enemy, it's himself and his emotions. And it's something that they keep falling back on repeatedly, time and time again, whenever they get him too powerful. But they don't ever learn. Instead, they just jack his power up more and try to come up with something insanely powerful for him to fight and beat. Which is causing problems. But, it hurt the movie. It hurt the public's overall perception. It really didn't know whether or not it wanted to be its own movie or just try to be a Superman 5, which Singer admits to, before then going on about what he would have done differently in Man of Steel and how his probably would have been better. I get really sick of hearing that. That's another thing. This is a side note, so put a sticky note there. We're going to come back to that. But yeah, that is what hurt those movies. But as an aside, do you ever notice how it's the Zack Snyder movies that all these other directors are suddenly coming out and saying, oh, I would have done it this way, and, it probably would have been better. Or at least quite different. And, Singer talks about what he would have done in Man of Steel. Who was it? Terry Gilliam, I think, talked about what he would have done differently in Watchmen. And, of course, both of those are Zack Snyder films. And in the case of Watchmen, I mean, that honestly is as close to a page-by-page, frame-by-frame, panel-by-panel adaptation you're going to get. And yet, people are talking about it like it was so horrible, and yet the comic with the exact same kind of narrative there is a masterpiece. That's what I don't get. Honestly, I think it's just because of who directed it. But let's move on, because that also plays into something else. It's this notion, though, among these people who are somehow established that, they can't do anything wrong. But here we go. So, again, when you come to these movies where things almost seem to hit a stumbling block, you'd think, okay, well, it crashed and burned. They're going to start over. In the case of Superman, they did. In the case of XMen, they were going to. But then 20th Century Fox, for some reason, decides, nope, we're not going to. The reboot that you're writing is no longer... The reboot that you're making is no longer a reboot. It is a prequel in the form of X-Men Origins. Which is why half the problems there are only contextual problems. If you look at it through the lens of how it was actually written and initially started to be made to be, which is, in fact, a reboot and not a prequel, most of the problems a lot of people have with the movie do disappear. But in the end, you also have to take it for what it is, and unfortunately it is a prequel, and it is something that did kind of screw with their entire universe. Then the same thing happened with X-Men First Class. Is it a prequel? No, it's a reboot. No, it's a prequel. No, it's a prequel. No, it's a reboot. It's a reboot prequel. It's a soft reboot. They couldn't make up their mind what it was. They were actually giving different stories from the director, the producers, the studio, all that, as it was being made. And that is another confusing thing. And then you got Days of Future Past that claims it's going to fix everything. But here's the deal. I don't know if everyone's seen the Wolverine, but they deleted a scene. It was an alternate ending where Wolverine actually did get his comic suit. And you know what? It was a variation of it. It was kind of a modernized version of it. The points on the mask were a bit shorter. The gloves weren't fabric anymore. They were like armored gloves, but they were still the black gloves. They had the things where the claws would pop out, all that good stuff. And it was something viable. It was something he could have worn. It was something that we have since learned people will not object to. I mean, look at Thor, look at Captain America, look at Iron Man, look at, you didn't have to completely and totally thoroughly gut them to make their costumes look viable. And that was something that I think James Mangold understood when he was making the movie. But then Singer comes back for Days of Future Past and tells him, "Nuh-uh, you can't put that in there. I'm not dressing Wolverine like that." And instead throws us a bone by giving him black armor / spandex with a faded, very pale yellow stripe in the arms. That is the closest to Wolverine's costume Singer thinks we, the public, can handle. Among other things that he did in there. But, honestly, see, this is the kind of thing that's frustrating. And the way they treat characters, and the way that they just seem to be able to, transplant them from here to there. Oh, this character's doing this. Oh, this character's doing that. Oh, we're going to take Kitty Pryde completely out of the Days of Future Past equation and have Wolverine just go back via mind time travel. Yeah, see, it's stuff like that. And in the end, what's the response that you get when you point out that that's kind of BS? Oh, well, you're still going to see it anyway. When people found out that the big plot twist in Iron Man 3 was going to be that the Mandarin was not the Mandarin, but was an actor playing the Mandarin, and the guy who was taking on the role of the Mandarin was actually a guy who, in the comics, played a role no bigger than a scientist who kills himself when things go awry, in the form of Killian. And what do we get? You're still going to see it anyway. And you know what the sad thing is? People did. Now, granted, that's because a lot of it is due to the fact that a lot of people don't follow online film news. And there was that big bump from the Avengers. So there is that, but people did in fact go see it, and they took note of that. They also did take note of the backlash, however, and eventually did take steps to rectify that. But this is what I mean. The reason that they took steps to rectify it is people became outspoken. Now, when you look at Spider-Man, the same thing happened with the XMen movies, honestly. They changed a lot of crap. They watered down a lot of the villains. They really tried to make this appeal to kids as much as possible, and you can tell that. But then, just when they finally, break the mold, even though the third movie was honestly the highest grossing Spider-Man film ever, it almost hit $1 billion. It really did. People got mad. People were not happy. People did not like how that film was a mess. But there's a reason that people think that film was a mess, and that film's going to get its own video in the future as well. But what you got there, though, is you have people who, once again, have this mentality of they're going to go see it anyway. They knew they liked the last one. They knew they were going to go see the third one. It was just that simple. Now, did they eventually listen to the backlash? Why, yes, they did. And even though they were going to fulfill their contract with Sam Raimi and make the rest of his movies, he knew that they were intending to reboot it afterward. And so that's why he said, you know what? We can't come to an agreement on this. I have these other projects I have to go to. We're going to go. Now, there's a lot of debate surrounding why Sam Raimi left. Some people say that they gave him an unrealistic window to make his movie in. Other people say that, they just wanted him gone because they decided they didn't like him because he was defiant, and when he put Venom in, he purposely ruined him. Yes, they're actually saying they're patting a director on the back for purposely ruining a film just because he didn't like everything the studio wanted him to do. That's wow. But anyway, it's whether you think that or not, honestly, 2 years is not an unrealistic window to make a film in. The guy wanted like 3 or 4. They said no, we need it in 2. That was the unrealistic window. And the window was unrealistic for him because he had other movies that he was contractually obligated to start working on. But, ironically enough, one of which I don't think ever came to fruition, and that was the World of Warcraft movie. But, yeah, that, fell apart. And so they rebooted. And now you got other people doing the whole, the last movie wasn't that bad, but I digress. Sometimes they listen. And ironically, when we do get what we want and they do listen, we then complain about what we get. But there are other times where we do have genuine complaints and genuine fears about the movie, and rather than try to dissuade them and convince people to go see it, they act like, oh well. Now, sometimes they do that, and for the most part, they've still done that. But the most recent case, where it's become very clear that Hollywood has become self-aware in terms of the movie, honestly stemmed from Michael B. Jordan. After the news broke that he had been cast as the Human Torch. And people were not happy. There were a plethora of reasons people are not happy. Most people like to try to frame it as they don't like the fact that he's black. While there are, loudmouth idiots out there that do think that, honestly, the majority of the complaints I've seen stem from this notion that Johnny and Sue should be, blood relatives. The Fantastic Four is very much about, family. And, the whole reason that Johnny was even there, despite being so much younger, was he was Sue's brother. And their dad being that scientist. It's just very family-themed, and a lot of people thought that they should have remained, blood relatives. And as a result, I actually think they should have cast a black actress as Susan Storm, as opposed to just stuck a white actress in there and said, oh, well, he's adopted or something. I know some people say, oh, they can still be an interracial family. Yeah, but the odds of that happening are obscenely slim, especially since, basically, from the sounds of what Josh Trank said before he, had his Twitter removed due to the meltdown, adoption's the route they're going. But it's just, when he was asked, what's his response to people who are, upset or worried about that, and he just laughs and casually tosses over his shoulder, they're going to see it anyways. They'll still go see it anyways. And that's the problem. Hollywood has become self-aware that basically, no matter what they do, so long as they put this stuff out, we'll still go see it anyways. If you wanted to know why they seem to be churning out crap nonstop too, that's why. You'll still go see it anyways. And to a degree, they're right. People keep talking about how horrible the Transformers movies are. And opinions on that are pretty split, right down the middle. And yet the movies keep making millions every time they come out. People keep talking about how horrible, movie X or movie Y is going to be, and yet they still go see it. One case that I do specifically remember, though, which was really the first time I had ever heard that they're going to go see it anyways, actually spouted by a studio. In fact, not only spouted by the studio, but once they like it, or once they see it, they're going to like it. They're going to see it, they're going to like it, they're going to see that we did the right thing. That was with Dragon Ball Evolution. That was where they pretty much got in the fan spaces and said the only reason you don't like it is you haven't seen it. Once you see it, you'll love it. And you'll see that we did, in fact, make it better. That is exactly what they said. You know what they got as a reaction? They got such a vehement and violent resistance and protest that it made media attention was given to it. They were actually interviewing the actors about it. They knew we existed because we were very vocal and very upset. And what did they say to us? They still threw it in our face. You're still going to see it anyways. Once you see it, you'll like it. You'll see it, you'll like it. But people didn't see it. When they did see it, they saw it through means that weren't going to make them money, and they didn't like it. And as a result, we have a film that while hitting that even in Japan, where people have been waiting for something like this and Dragon Ball is huge, it went from #1 opening weekend to dropping like a rock. It was completely gone from any charts by the third week. It went from #1 to #8 to number 15 to gone. Here, didn't even make $10 million. But still, this is a very disturbing trend, and until people do indeed finally put their foot down and say, you know what, I'm not going to see this, then this is going to continue. Now, I have no problem with someone making a movie per se that I don't really agree with or like. I won't see the movie, obviously, or if I do, I'm going to wait to see it until I can see it via means that are going to be less taxing on my pocketbook, rentals specifically. But when it comes to this whole concept of, I'm not going to agree with everything every director does. And there are some things that I'm going to wish were done a little different. But, so long as they actually have a reason for it and can give it, and it's an understandable reason, I'm a little more inclined to let it slide. I am. Because, they have a reason. When they do it just for the sake of doing it and then try to hide behind something vague like vision or something and then try to toss it at you, you're going to see it anyways, which is what's happening with Batman versus Superman or whatever the heck they're finally going to call it. And what's happening with the Fantastic Four reboot. Then yeah, I'm going to have a problem with that, and frankly you should too. When they openly in your face tell you you're going to see it anyways, that is where you should draw the line and not see it. I'm sorry. But this is a very disturbing trend in Hollywood, and unfortunately, I don't see it dying anytime soon. I don't see the attitude dying, and I don't see people actually giving up their fixation with going to the next big blockbuster to make it stop. But hopefully one day I'll be proven wrong. Hopefully. At any rate, so in the future we're going to be talking about Spider-Man 3. In the future we're going to be talking about, oh my god, help me, I did forget. It'll come back to me though, it comes back to me recurringly. Also though, I think my next video I'm going to be doing is probably going to be talking about the Marvel one-shot, and then probably the Ninja 2 review, because I really do want to get those out. So at any rate, that's it for now, and I will definitely see you guys later. Adios.